we've got Abraham on Mount Moriah about to slay his son and burn him as an offering on an altar as previously directed by God 3 days before. Now, Abraham has also brought 2 of his servants with him, and it's at this point that we read in Genesis chapter 22, verse 5, that Abraham said to his young men, his servants, "You guys stay here with the donkey. I and the boy will go over there and worship and come again to you." He says, I and the boy are going to go over there and worship. It's in this context that we encounter the word worship. A man who, for all he knows, has been told by God that he is going to have to slay his son and give him completely to God. And in doing so, Abraham would also not only be giving his son, but be giving every promise that God had shown him that would come from his progeny. God told Abraham, your descendants will be like the sand of the seashore. And he's giving all that on the altar with his son that he loves so much. That's the context where we encounter this word worship in the book of Genesis. Genesis, the seedbed for the rest of the Bible. And yet we have Christians today who talk about going to a worship service. By worship service, they mean going to sing songs that usually don't even have lyrics that are very meaningful at all. Sing songs, sit on a chair, drinking a latte, listening to somebody give a pep talk, and we call that worship. And even if it's a formidable church service, is that really all that worship is? Because as the Bible presents it in the first book of the scriptures, the book of Genesis, worship has to do with a person recognizing that God is worth everything. See, the English word worship comes from worthship. When you truly have an encounter with God, you recognize that He is worth everything, that He is infinitely above us, that He is our creator, and that our calling with Him is no less than to give everything that we are, everything that we have to Him, to be willing to yield it to Him. Now, of course, God did not require Abraham to slay his son. God had a substitution in place, because all this was a picture of the coming of Jesus Christ, of God the Father giving His Son, Jesus, as a sacrifice for our sins. So God provided a substitutionary ram to be offered, but for all Abraham knew, and it wasn't until Abraham was ready to slay his son, knife in hand, that God stopped it, because God knew, and God showed Abraham that Abraham knew, he loved the Lord more than anything. That's what worship is. Worship is not just attending a service once a week. Worship is not just doing a daily devotion. Worship is not just raising your hands and singing songs. Worship is so much bigger and so much deeper than that. Worship has to do with, at every Y in the road, at every decision you make, every resource you have, you choose God's glory. You choose to show and demonstrate through your life, through your affections, through your time, through your money, through your activities, through your words, you choose to demonstrate every time that God is the greatest, the biggest, and more wonderful than anything else in the universe, including ourselves. That's worship. That is worship. I encourage you to take Genesis chapter 22, verse 5, and pray over it this very day. Let us ask ourselves the question, am I truly worshiping the Lord?